Physics usually begins by asking, what is the smallest thing? That sounds reasonable, but mechanically it is already the wrong starting point, because size alone does nothing. A perfectly small thing that cannot change, cannot influence, and cannot trigger anything else is mechanically irrelevant. It may exist as a description, but it cannot participate in reality. Reality is not built from things, it is built from events. Hi, I'm CJ, and this is the biggest picture. For anything to be part of a functioning universe, it must be able to act. It must be able to change state. It must be able to influence its surroundings. And it must be able to cause something else to happen. In other words, it must act. If nothing acts, nothing happens. If nothing happens, there is no universe to describe. So the foundational question cannot be about size. It must be about capability. The correct starting point is this: what is the smallest unit that can perform an action and pass it on? That question immediately introduces three mechanical requirements. First, locality. The unit must act somewhere specific, otherwise action cannot be directed. Second, internal variability. The unit must be able to be in more than one state, otherwise no change is possible. Third, transfer. The result of its action must be able to affect something else, otherwise causality stops. These are not philosophical preferences. They are functional requirements. Remove any one of them, and action becomes impossible. Once action is taken as the foundation, several familiar ideas quietly lose their priority. Description is no longer primary. Mathematical representation is no longer primary. Objects defined only by properties are no longer primary. What matters first is process. Only after process exists can structure, stability, and persistence appear. From this point on, the task is not to invent new ingredients. The task is to determine what kind of unit can satisfy these mechanical requirements, how such a unit must behave, and what consequences follow automatically if it exists. Nothing will be assumed. Everything will be constrained. If the universe works at all, something must be able to act. Not as a concept, not as a description, but mechanically. Physics already has candidates that are often treated as fundamental, so instead of introducing anything new, we will start by checking whether these familiar elements can actually satisfy the requirements we just established. We are not asking whether they are useful, we are asking whether they can sustain a universe. First, fields. A field assigns a value to every point in space. That makes it continuous. But continuity alone does not produce action. A field does not act locally. It has no internal state that resolves something on its own. Nothing happens until something else interacts with it. So a field describes conditions. It does not initiate events. That means it cannot sit at the foundation. Next, particles. Particles are local. They have position. They have properties. But a particle's behavior is defined by how it responds. It reacts to forces. It follows equations. Left alone, it does nothing. Its change is always triggered from outside. So particles participate in events, but they do not start them. That makes them outcomes, not actors. Next, quanta. Quanta describe discrete exchanges. They tell us that change happens in steps. But a quantum is not an agent. It is a bookkeeping unit. It labels an interaction after it has occurred. It does not explain how the interaction begins. So quantization describes resolution. It does not generate action. Each of these elements is extremely powerful as a description. Each of them works once a process is already underway. But none of them, by themselves, satisfy all three requirements. They are not self-initiating. They do not resolve change internally. And they do not perform handoff as a fundamental operation. That tells us something important. Current physics describes how events unfold. It does not describe what makes them unfold in the first place. So if the universe is to function at all, something deeper must exist. Not as a replacement, as a substrate, something that is local, internally active, and capable of passing action onward without waiting to be pushed. We have not named it yet, but by now, its shape is already constrained. Physics did not ignore this problem. It tried to bind its most successful frameworks into a single structure. Relativity describes gravity as the behavior of geometry. Quantum theory describes interactions as discrete, probabilistic events. Each works extraordinarily well in its own regime, so the natural ambition was to unify them. That effort produced highly sophisticated mathematics, consistent frameworks, elegant structures. In many cases, the equations do close. String theory represents the most ambitious of these attempts. It explicitly aims to bind quantum theory and relativity into a single framework. It replaces point-like entities with extended objects. It allows additional dimensions. It aligns forces within a unified mathematical structure. In that sense, string theory does exactly what unification is supposed to do. So the question is not whether it is ambitious. The question is whether it satisfies the same three requirements. When evaluated this way, a familiar pattern appears. The frameworks unify descriptions, they bind equations, they align symmetries. But the role of a smallest local actor is still not specified. Gravity consistently appears only at the collective level. In quantum theory, gravity is absent as a fundamental operation. In relativity, gravity governs the whole system, but does not originate from a local unit. In unification attempts, gravity emerges from structure, not from action. So when judged by the same three requirements, each framework satisfies part of the picture, none satisfies all of it. This is not a failure of relativity, it is not a failure of quantum theory, and it is not a failure of unification attempts. It is a boundary. It tells us that whatever sits underneath must be both local and collective at once, able to act individually, and able to produce gravity as a collective outcome. At this point, it's important to be precise. This is not an exhaustive survey of all possible theories. What has been established are necessary conditions. Any framework, present or future, must satisfy the same requirements if it is to sustain a functioning universe. So the question is not whether every idea has been checked. The question is whether any idea can work without satisfying these conditions. If it cannot, it fails regardless of its mathematics. We have not introduced the solution yet. The universe is not empty. It is completely filled with a dense, dynamic substance. This is the unified medium. It is made of countless identical building blocks. They are called medium units. The medium unit is the smallest structure that is physically meaningful. Everything we observe emerges from its behavior. An MU is extremely small, on the order of twice the diameter of an electron. But it is not static, it is pure motion. Each medium unit moves in two ways at the same time. First, it performs a side-to-side reciprocation. Along its length, the motion accelerates toward the center, slows near the ends, and then reverses direction. This oscillation never stops. It creates a continuous internal flow. Second, the medium unit rotates. It sweeps a circular path. The rotation is tight near the center and wider near the ends. This rotation never reverses. Even when the reciprocation flips, the rotation continues in the same direction. These two motions are inseparable. Together, they form a closed dynamic loop, a continuously curved pattern of motion that sweeps out a three-dimensional surface. The medium unit is not a particle. It is not a point. It is not a mathematical abstraction. It is a region of persistent physical motion. It is almost string-like in the sense that it forms a loop. But unlike string theory, this loop is not hypothetical. It is real motion inside a fully packed medium. There are no gaps, no vacuum regions. Every medium unit touches its neighbors. They press against one another. They constantly adjust. The entire universe is a tightly packed lattice of these rotating, reciprocating loops. Stability does not come from rest. It comes from activity. Waves, forces, and interactions are simply changes propagating through this network. Because a medium unit is a loop of motion, it can bend. Within normal limits, it flexes and returns to its original geometry. This allows waves to pass smoothly through the medium. But there is a critical threshold. If a medium unit is bent beyond its natural limit, it cannot relax back. It collapses into a higher tension configuration. That collapse is the origin of matter. From this single transition arise electrons, atomic cores, stable subatomic structures, and the tension pathways around them. Matter is not something added to the medium. Matter is the unified medium under extreme curvature. At this point, we are not explaining everything. We are only doing one thing. We are putting the candidate mechanism on the table. Now that its structure and dynamics are visible, we can finally ask the only question that matters. Does this unit actually satisfy the 3 requirements needed to sustain a universe? That is what we test next. The medium unit is continuously active. It does not pause, it does not decay, and it does not require periodic reactivation. That immediately raises a mechanical question. No system that is closed, and no system that relies on internal storage, can sustain continuous activity indefinitely. If the MU were powered internally, it would run down. If it stored motion, it would accumulate imbalance. Neither is observed. So the MU cannot be a self-powered system. Its activity must be supplied, not intermittently, continuously, and not from within the 3-dimensional medium it operates in. The supply must come from outside the constraints that govern the MU's internal mechanics. This requirement is not speculative. It follows directly from the fact that the MU never exhausts. The source of its motion cannot be bound by the same geometry, timing, or conservation limits that the MU enforces locally. That source is what we refer to as the 4th dimension. Not as an extra spatial direction, not as a place objects move into, but as a maintenance layer. A layer that continuously supplies the internal motion that the MU expresses locally. The MU doesn't generate motion. It converts supplied motion into local resolution. The connection between the MU and this higher dimensional layer is direct. It is not occasional. It isn't switched on and off. Every MU is permanently coupled. This coupling is what allows the MU's internal loop to reset every cycle without loss. What appears in 3 dimensions as continuous oscillation and rotation is, mechanically, the projection of higher dimensional activity through a constrained interface. This interface has already appeared earlier in the series, not as a special event, not as a rare phenomenon, but as a casually used gate. The gate is not an exception, it is the rule. Every MU operates through it. At every moment. The 4th dimension does not intervene. It does not correct. It does not steer. It supplies motion uniformly. What happens to that motion is determined entirely by the local configuration of the MU network. This is why the universe does not wind down. This is why propagation does not fade. And this is why activity does not require fuel. The MU is not an engine. It is an interface. A local mechanism that translates continuous, higher dimensional activity into 3-dimensional resolution. With this coupling in place, the MU's behavior is fully determined. There is no missing driver, no hidden reservoir, no external force, only continuous supply and local response. At the beginning of this film, we defined 3 requirements that any fundamental unit must satisfy to sustain a functioning universe. locality, internal variability, and transfer of action. We now apply those same requirements to the medium unit. No interpretation, no comparison, just testing. First, locality. A medium unit occupies a specific location in the unified medium. It interacts only with its immediate neighbors. Its resolution occurs where it is, not elsewhere, not globally. That satisfies locality. Second, internal variability. A medium unit is not locked into a single state. Its internal dynamics continuously resolve configuration. Reciprocation and rotation allow multiple outcomes depending on local conditions. Change does not have to be imposed from outside. It is intrinsic. That satisfies internal variability. Third, transfer. The result of each resolution is immediately handed on to adjacent medium units. There is no buffering, no delay, no carrier. Action does not stop at the boundary of the unit. It continues as the input for the next resolution. That satisfies transfer. All three requirements are met by the same unit, simultaneously, not sequentially. Nothing additional is required. No external rule, no corrective mechanism, no secondary layer. The medium unit passes the test because it was constructed to satisfy the requirements from the start. This doesn't prove that the medium unit is correct. It establishes that it is mechanically viable. Any alternative candidate must do the same. With a unit that satisfies locality, internal variability, and transfer, we can now return to the one phenomenon that consistently resisted placement: gravity. The universe consists entirely of the unified medium. Three-dimensional space is the collective arrangement of medium units in equilibrium. Because medium units are identical and continuously active, their collective behavior is balanced. This balance is equilibrium. When equilibrium is undisturbed, no large-scale motion appears. Atoms introduce structure into the medium. When three MULs lock into a spinning core, a central fourth-dimensional gate forms. This gate connects the atom through the fourth dimension to a distant outflow region in three-dimensional space. Unified medium flows through the fourth-dimensional gate and re-enters three-dimensional circulation elsewhere. Every atom, therefore, acts as a continuous intake point for unified medium. The surrounding medium responds. Medium units flow to supply the required throughput toward the gate. When atoms are isolated, these flows remain small and locally balanced. When many atoms are concentrated, their combined intake increases. The unified medium flows inward toward that region to maintain continuity. This inward flow is gravity. Nothing is pulled, nothing is exchanged. The medium itself is moving. Objects move because their internal structures are made of the same medium participating in that flow. At larger scales, the same circulation organizes the universe. Regions with many atomic gates draw strong inflow and form stars, galaxies, and clusters. Regions with few gates act as outflow domains. These are cosmic voids. The fourth-dimensional gate connects intake and outflow without distance. Circulation remains balanced across the universe, independent of three-dimensional separation. Gravity is therefore not an interaction. It is the large-scale pattern of unified medium flow created by atomic intake and fourth-dimension mediated release. One thing stands out once the structure is laid out. Nothing in this picture requires multiple kinds of entities. There is only one: the medium unit. On its own, the MU is a dynamic element. It resolves configuration internally. It hands action onward locally. This is where discreteness appears. This is where structure can form. This is what has traditionally been described as quantum behavior. Not because it is probabilistic, but because it is local and resolved unit by unit. At the same time, the very same medium units exist only as a collective. There are no isolated units. They touch, press, and adjust everywhere. Together, they form the unified medium. As a collective, the same local resolutions add up. They produce large-scale organization, flow patterns, inflow, outflow, global geometry. This is what has traditionally been described as relativistic behavior, not because space bends abstractly, but because the medium reorganizes as a whole. These are not two theories describing different worlds. They are two perspectives on the same element. The medium unit acting locally, and the medium unit acting collectively. What links these two modes is not an equation. It is the fourth dimension, not only as a gate used by atoms, but as the continuous driver of all activity. Every MU draws its motion from the same higher dimensional layer. That is why local action and global organization never conflict. They are powered by the same source. Previous frameworks failed to unify because they separated what should never have been separated. They treated local action and collective structure as fundamentally different. Here, they are the same thing, seen at different scales. One element, one source of motion, two modes of operation. That is the unifying factor, and it is the reason nothing extra needs to be added. Well, that was a lot simpler than the usual nonsense, wasn't it? That's what happens when you stop splitting the universe into pieces that were never separate to begin with. It's just one thing, acting locally, organizing collectively, powered from the same place. That's it. Next time, we follow what that actually does.